Last night when I saw the president of the Bible, I was thinking of so many things in the Bible that would have been appropriate in terms of the humanity of all people in our country. And I was thinking about time. You know, time is such the most important commodity, the most important commodity, the most finite of all commodities. The time it takes to make the change necessary. And it's long overdue time for us to make some of that change that people were calling out for.
And Speaker Nancy Pelosi joins us now. Madam Speaker, thank you so much for being with us. It's interesting, everyone from Pat Robertson to several Republican senators to even the Pope expressing concerns about how things are being handled in the United States right now. Talk about that scene, if you will, where the president had peaceful demonstrators cleared and attacked and gassed and members of the press beaten so he could go hold up a Bible at a photo op.
Well, it shows the contradiction and the inconsistency. If you're going to hold up a Bible and stand in front of a church, then what your message should be consistent with that Bible and that those values. And of course, it was not. His Holiness the Pope has spoken out against in support of the protesters and rejecting violence, as we all do. But also, I was very proud of the Archbishop of Washington, D.C., who just was flabbergasted at the thought that a religious institution would allow itself to be used, as was the shrine to St. John Paul, yesterday. His statement was very strong. So again, America is a kind nation. America's heart is full of love. Many people are oriented toward religion, and faith-based organizations play a very strong role in our life. But we have to be consistent. We have to act upon our values. And what happened the other night was an exploitation of the good feelings of the American people by associating themselves with the Bible and with the church, but not in any way in terms of his actions. My daughter, Alexandra, filmmaker, journalist, was there that night, and she called me and she said, "Mom, you wouldn't even believe it. These people were demonstrating peacefully, and all of a sudden, this barrage of security came through, using clubs to beat people and these explosive little bullets that explode into stuff that burns your eyes. Maybe they didn't have tear gas, I don't know, but they had the elements of it for peaceful demonstrators to make way for the president to walk through. What is this, a banana republic?
You know, the polls that have come out recently have shown the overwhelming majority of Americans support those who are marching and protesting, and the overwhelming majority of Americans oppose the president's reaction to this. Are you hopeful, even though it's so late to still hold out hope, but are you hopeful that perhaps some of the president's natural allies may start speaking out against him and encouraging him to be a more unifying force in the middle of this extraordinary moment? As Admiral Mullen said yesterday, this inflection point in American history?
Well, you would know better than I what would go on in the minds of the Republicans on the other side of the aisle. So far, they have given the president carte blanche, but they do represent their own people. And when they hear from them, I think we would get a different reaction from them. I salute Admiral Mullen for his courage in coming out and saying what he did, speaking truth. President George W. Bush, speaking for himself, and Laura Bush, had a beautiful statement yesterday that I wish everyone would read. But as far as the Republicans here are concerned, let's hope that whatever they're thinking, they will be voting in support of some of the initiatives that now we should be paving the way for. They've all been in the hopper for a while, whether we're talking about qualified immunity so that you cannot prosecute a police officer for breaking the law, whether it's ending racial profiling, whether it's issues that relate to chokeholds and the rest, whether the list goes on that have been there. And hopefully, as part of a comprehensive package, we can get that done. At the same time, I just want to be sure that people know there are plenty of things that relate to justice. We certainly want to honor what happened to George Floyd, so tragic and so sad. But at the same time, it's just an explosion of so much else that is out there, a tinderbox. And in terms of economic injustice, social injustice, environmental injustice, the list goes on. And many of those issues are addressed in the HEROES Act when we talk about health injustice, where we're talking about how to address how the COVID-19 is affecting people of color in a disproportionate way, whether we're talking about how we can help people at this difficult economic time, whether we're talking about issues that relate to food and rent and the rest at this difficult time for all Americans, including people of color in our country. But then as we go on from that to the infrastructure legislation that we've had ready, we'll talk about environmental injustice as well. And as you know, many people are predisposed to the coronavirus because of respiratory dispositions that they have from living in places where environmental injustice prevails. So we're ready. Our Black Caucus, we're taking our lead from them on so many of these issues as we have along the way. Any bill that's leaving the station, they're on, whether it's a funding bill, and we talk about historical black colleges and universities, whether we're talking about what Mr. Clyburn, whom you'll have on shortly, will have 10, 20, 30, his initiative to make sure that the resources that we spend are spent in areas that have been underserved in the past. As I say, the list goes on. And I'm very proud that so many of our members have taken the initiative right in the here and now in terms of their committees. Benny Thompson of Mississippi, the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, is calling upon the Secret Service to explain, to come forward and brief on their role in all of this. Adam Smith of Washington State, the chair of the Armed Services Committee, calling forth General Milley and the Secretary of Defense Esper to come in to explain what they're talking about in terms of military force in our country. Members of the Black Caucus have different pieces of legislation. Commission on Truth from Barbara Lee, Commission on the social status of young black men and boys, Frederica Wilson. The list goes on. So we'll be intense, proactive, and again, because the American people have identified with all of these injustices, believe that at long last we may have some success in the United States Senate with it.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.